He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. When I think of the book of Revelation and what I've learned, one thing that comes to mind is how directly applicable its messages are to us today. It's easy for me to feel the Bible slip into something that doesn't translate well to my problems, or as something interesting to study, but not practically apply. But the theme in the book of Revelation of perseverance through adversity and of God's eventual triumph over the forces of wrong is one that is always going to be something we need to hear. John's writings of his prophetic visions demonstrate all the rewards that await for us at the pearly gates, and I don't think there's ever been a time I've needed to hear that more. Revelation 12 says, "She gave birth to a son, a male child, who will rule all the nations with an iron scepter, and her child was snatched up to God and his heavenly throne." This one is a bit tricky for me, but incredibly interesting. The word snatched is so coarse. We almost get this painful analogy to tell the story of the birth of Jesus from the earth which he came to save. And it doesn't really end up sounding like a happy story. Revelation has a reputation for a reason. One of its themes is unavoidable, the tragedy of the earth. There is hope, and we have a savior coming. But there has been so much heartbreak along the way. Revelation 21. And I saw an angel coming down out of heaven, having the key to the abyss, and holding in his hand a great chain. One theme of Revelation we often find ourselves not being able to pinpoint exactly because we are so immediately immersed in is that of the wonder of God. But it takes only a small step back to see it in front of you. When you read about the epic scenes of battles in heaven and God appearing in all his glory and really try to imagine it, it's hard to miss. It's an interesting dichotomy, the contrast of Jesus as a lowly carpenter, as we were first introduced to him, and a glorious God charging into battle. But I think it highlights how we all have a place in the story of heaven, any kind of earthly status aside. Revelation 20:10. And the devil that deceived them was cast into a lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. Revelation, for being a book riddled with symbols and images, is incredibly straightforward here, to the point where sometimes it feels uncomfortably blunt. But I think this speaks to the prevalent theme of justice that runs through its narrative, and erases any possible room for doubt. There is something to be found in the black and white of good versus evil, where good will be glorified and bad will be punished, because then it's perfectly clear where you need to be. I'm sure none of us are strangers to the idea of an Old Testament and New Testament God, an angry God ready to strike down those who disobey, and a loving Son that spent all his time with the ones shunned by those that upheld the law of said angry God. Sometimes I read verses like the previous one and feel like Revelation is an oddball in this section of the Bible, that it feels like we are back to the wrath of that Old Testament God. But I think that's missing what to me is the most important takeaway of Revelation: hope. Revelation is not solely an added-on doomsday alert at the end of the epistles of Paul. It's a message that brings the Bible to a conclusion of looking forward. It's God saying, bad stuff is going to happen, but if you have me, you'll make it through. And he that sat on the throne said, Behold, I make all things new. And he said unto me, Write, for these words are true and faithful. Victory of God is the central theme of the book of Revelation. And I think there's nothing more comforting than that.